just like, oh wow, independent shows are really cool because it's like a little bit more personable. You know, it's
Mhm.
not like a big arena. But Slick asked if I was interested in trying out some practice matches as a referee, and from there, it just pretty much stuck.
How many times for now Ring of Honor?
I did 3 shows for them.
Daniel Garcia and Wheeler Yuta?
That's probably the best match that I've done in my career. Apparently, like, that was a match that pretty much got Yuta signed. He started about a year before I did, and naturally, he was basically like my mentor. AG is actually one of my mentors. He used to referee back in the day, and I would watch him do that. And I just thought it was interesting because Bobby Ocean, who's an assistant coach there, I used to watch him when I went to like CTWE shows.
What makes Test of Strength stand out?
What I liked about Test of Strength was I felt like the student body was probably the thing that drew me in. That inspires people, cool. But I still got a lot of time left, and you know, we'll see how far I go.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Another episode of Best for Business. Now, when I decided I was going to do Ref Month, there was a few people lined up, but everyone was telling me I'd have Gina on. Gina, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me.
I think it's like crazy to me because I forgot what year. I was going into like 8th grade, and the one match I remember watching was the Pretzel death match, and all I remember were you were reffing for that one. So it's crazy. I went from watching you in like middle school to now commentating shows you're on.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you remember who was in that pretzel death match?
I was trying to think. I think it was Foxy Calvin Campbell. I think he was one.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
want to say Corinne, and then I think there was a third, but I forgot who.
Yeah, you're right. I think there were about like 3 or 4 people in that.
Yeah,
Corinne is great, and Foxy, I haven't seen him in a long time. He's really
yeah.
fun too. Yeah.
Have you seen Corinne too, or?
No, I think she stepped away from wrestling. The last time I refed one of her matches was probably 2019 or so. I think it
Wow.
was at like a taco festival,
Was Corinne the
something like
Golden
that.
Girl, or did she switch from that?
Yeah, she was doing something that was more like a football sort
Oh,
of
that's right. Yeah.
style. So I was able to at least like know her during her Golden Girl time though. But
Nice. So
yeah.
yeah, let's talk about you. So when did you decide like wrestling was something that you wanted to get involved with?
Ooh, so I got recruited to take classes at Test of Strength in 2018.
Wow.
So I think 2018 was pretty much the time. Yeah.
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 How'd you get recruited?
I was just pretty much going to shows, and Slick Wagner Brown, who's a trainer at Test of Strength, asked if I was interested in trying some free classes for a month.
Wow. So then when do you decide to make that jump to become a referee?
So when I did the classes, it was mostly for wrestling and learning wrestling basics, and I just thought this really hurts. I don't like it.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I was thinking maybe I should like take a step back and like reevaluate what kind of role I want to do. And I was going to manage Ty Shine. I'm not sure if you remember him.
Yeah.
And I think he was not like injured, but he was hurt, so he needed to be out for like a month at that time. And Slick asked if I was interested in trying out some practice matches as a referee, and from there, it just pretty much stuck.
So did you do any matches managing at all?
I think I did like a couple. For cosplay wrestling, I actually did manage. Yeah,
What was your
so I
gimmick
did
for
watch it.
that?
For the cosplay wrestling, I was a Pokemon trainer, and
Oh,
I just had little
nice.
Pokemon that I sent out.
Yeah.
So hopefully, I didn't get to do it again this year, but I hope to in the future because it's a fun one.
Yeah, and then one thing I was seeing on your social media is before wrestling was it you have a background in was it kung fu?
Yeah, yeah, I still practice.
So like when did you like decide to do that? Because that's pretty cool.
Oh, okay. I used to do judo when I was in high school, and then there was like a period when I wasn't really practicing anything.
Mhm.
So, I think it was like in grad school at the time, and I asked a friend of mine who eventually became my kung fu instructor, like, "Hey, I see that you teach classes." And he thought that Hawaiian Kempo was going to be the best for me,
Mhm.
and basically I showed up for the wrong date.
Yeah.
and it was a kung fu class instead. And I'm like, this doesn't seem like Kempo to me. But I really liked it. I liked the movements. It was very different than what I was used to. And I said, I really like this class, even though it was I showed up for the wrong day. He was like, well, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. Like, if you want to keep training with this style, that's cool. If the other one you want to try, that's fine. So I think I've been doing Kung Fu for 10 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's talk test of strength. Now, before we talk about test of strength, there was something I was seeing on social media yesterday that I had to ask you about.
Mm.
Your cousins with TJ Howell III?
Yeah, that's right. Oh my gosh. I think we're like very distant cousins though by marriage, but yeah, that was a really weird thing when we found out about that because we were training together
Mhm.
before, like a few months before then. And I think like my mom like noticed him once and she goes like, I think that like he's related to us somehow. So that was funny. Yeah, that's a
Wow.
good one.
So, test of strength, you said you went to a show and then they asked you if you want to start training. What made you go to that test of strength show?
So I was going to I kind of went to a lot of different independent shows. I think the first independent show that I went to was Wrestle Jam. That
Mhm.
used to be run in different areas within Connecticut, but it was only done like once or twice a year. And I remember the main event was with Bobby Fish and Roderick Strong, so that was
Wow.
pretty cool. Um, and I was just like, oh wow, independent shows are really cool because it's like a little bit more personable. It's
Mhm.
not like a big arena, but it looks like you actually can interact and see the different matches. And because Wrestle Jam was an annual type of show, they had like the ability to put a lot of their budget into like different types of matches. So there were
Mhm.
some matches that were Chikara, there were some matches that weren't. I think Kaiju Big Battle actually did a match there too. So I got to see different types of things, and from there I started going to different promotions.
Nice.
I was going to Paradise Alley for a bit, and Ty Shine recommended going to Tessa Strand because he's like, well, that's the school that I come from. And it was very close to where I was living at the time, and they had free shows at the time for training days. And that was the one that I went to. And yeah, that's basically where I got recruited.
Nice. So when we talk about test of strength, I had Ryan Frost and BMT. They were both talking about test of strength. But in your eyes, like what makes test of strength stand out? Is the way they challenge you, or what is it that you loved about it?
I haven't really been to many other schools. I think
Mhm.
the only other ones that I've been to were like either seminars or over at TWE that was in Chattanooga, Tennessee when I lived there for a bit. And I think that's a fabulous combine as well. It's a really cool place to go to. What I liked about Test of Strength was I felt like the student body was probably the thing that drew me in. Sammy Diaz comes from there. Eventually, Ichiban started training over there as well. Ryan Frost was there. Elijah Six was there. Um, Richard E. Stone, Jay Bricks, and a bunch of other people too.
Mhm.
And I just thought it was interesting because Bobby Ocean, who's an assistant coach there, I used to watch him when I
Wow.
went to like CTWE shows before that became basically like NEW. And it was nice to just have like someone relatable there who I remembered be someone to coach me. And I thought that the student body was really nice. I felt like these are pretty down to earth type people, so you
Mhm.
could like go to them with like a problem and they'd be very receptible to like listening and talking to you. So that and I just felt like the work ethic that everybody had was very motivating. I've seen Bobby Ocean like a few times before, and I felt like he had a very interesting presence. Like he has a very strong presence, very stern. So I think that to train with him was great. He was also very good at showing basics. And I think he continues to be very good at that. So yeah, it was a very interesting feeling, and I was happy
Nice.
that I was able
So
to train with him.
a few of the people you mentioned, let's talk about Ichiban is the first one. So
Mhm.
what's it been like to see, like you mentioned, he came in a test of strength, to see the transformation from when Ichiban first started to where he is now?
So I think around the pandemic time, that was kind of rough because like no one was really coming to training.
Mhm.
But I was like going to training whenever I could. And after it was like a certain amount of time when we were allowed to go back in, and Ishiban was one of the very few. Sometimes it was just us with one of the coaches for a few hours at night. and maybe like one other person. So we trained together like a lot towards the beginning until other students felt it was safe enough to come back to the school. So I feel like he was able to gain a lot of advantage because one, he's a very naturally gifted athlete.
Mm,
But I think having that ability to work with the coaches uh, in an intimate way like that, because there wasn't so many students, and he had that time with everyone individually, really helped as well.
nice.
But he was able to excel and go so fast in his improvements. He really is like a very gifted athlete.
And then the next one you talk about, how long have you known Sammy Diaz?
I met Sammy, well, not met him, but I saw him at Paradise Alley at one of the Friday Alley Night Fight shows. That was the first time that I've seen him. Apparently, he used to also go to another school that was in Cheshire at the time. I can't remember it, but that's where Hippie Dicky Moon came from. Ryan Frost as well.
Mm,
So I met him on my first day of training. It was mostly him showing me how to do a few things, and then over time, yeah, we started to work together more.
nice. So one of the signature things for you, I was talking to you, you said you don't really do much. Blue shoes. So when did that happen?
Mhm. I came to practice once with my entire like uniform,
Mhm.
and Tessa Strength has an all black uniform,
Yeah.
and I never like had to get like my own uniform, shirt, pants, whatever. So I went out and bought it. And before like our first big show, I said to him, my coach, like, "Hey, could I like come into practice with the uniform on because I just want to try it on and see like how it feels?" And he goes,
Mhm.
"Sure." But I didn't have black shoes, and I brought like blue shoes with me because I usually like I used to wear them to practice all the time.
Yeah.
But like when I wore them with the blue shoes, Wagner was like, "Oh yeah, definitely wear those because they really have like a nice color and pop
Hmm.
with the uniform." So since then I had like three different kinds of shoes. The second pair was kind of like baby powder blue, which I didn't
Hmm.
really like too much, and now like the other ones I have are like very blue. But I will wear them at BST because it does match the uniform.
So test of strength, is that black on black?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Test Strength, the uniform is like a black polo with the logo on
Nice.
the left
That's
side.
like what IWTV does too, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we have a different kind of polo where it's like kind of like a mesh material, and it
Mhm.
has like the actual like printing of like IWTV.live on the back.
Nice.
That I think is supposed to simulate the like fight official
Oh,
type
okay. Yeah.
shirts more, which I like.
Mhm.
I think that's probably one of my favorite uniforms that I've had.
Do you have a favorite?
So. I actually still have my Chikara
Oh, that's
uniform because
cool.
no one asked for it back.
Hmm.
I like that because I love the color. The blue looks great. I love like the Chikara logo. The IWT one's also a favorite. There used to be one promotion I worked for, which was 01 USA, but it was a Northeast
Yep.
chapter that Anthony Greene was
We
running,
let's
and
talk
he
about it.
had.
I had that written down.
Okay, great. Well, that uniform had like a striped, but it was like a pin stripe kind
Hmm.
of shirt, which I thought was kind of cool. I had a red collar and also like the American flag on like I think like one of the sleeves or something like that. And I always thought that was a very nice uniform. It was good material. It's a shame that I always had to give that uniform back at the end of every show. But yeah, that's probably one of my favorite ones.
Now you refed all those shows for AG.
I don't. There was one that I missed. I can't remember which one it was though.
Mhm.
But just
But
there was one that I
to
missed.
be a part of that, that was like AG's vision. All the shows, I think it was what the pandemics when it stopped.
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So AG is actually one of my mentors.
Nice.
Because he used to referee back in the day, and I would watch him do that at CTWE. And to see him go into a wrestling role, he still takes refereeing seriously. It's so funny because there'll be times where like he'll do a guest ref kind of like thing. And I'm like, "Oh, how did that go?" And he goes like, I felt like I did this and this and this. Like I could have done those things better. And I think that's so funny because like that's not what he's like paid to do. But to work for him, I think was like probably one of the best feelings. I was so flattered that he chose me for a spot like that.
Nice. Another company I want to ask you about. Walk me through. I don't know if it was your idea or what. Rad Pro Rasslin.
It's not my idea, but
Okay.
I think I've been to every Rad Show Pro since they
Nice.
started last year. It started, I think, in March of last year, if
Hmm.
I remember correctly. And that one's set in the 90s, so we always do this thing at the beginning of the show where we travel back in time. I think we're
Right.
supposed to be in 1994 right now, or
Amazing.
1995. And we have like a lot of people in the New England area. Sometimes, like, we'll get guests like Effie was a guest on. Cole Cabana was also a guest, where they do like different kinds of characters, but it's all set like in a 90s setting.
What's your name there?
Regina Donatello is my name
Was
there.
that your
So
idea or no?
I didn't really care what the last name was, but I said Regina I think works because it's close to my name,
Mhm.
and it would be a little bit easier for people to remember.
Now
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like in your eyes, minus like the time traveling, is this like any way like live prov wrestling in sort of a way, a wrestle party?
Oh, I think it's a little bit more akin to Wrestle Party than Live Pro,
Yeah,
because like I think Wrestle Party included more stories to it,
yeah,
whereas at Rad Pro there definitely are continuous stories, and
nice.
Live Prov was like kind of like that, but it was a little bit more like fun matches.
Yeah. And
Yeah, a
then
little bit.
I want to date myself. I remember during the pandemic, I forgot who it was. Somebody made the whole TOS roster in Fire Pro Wrestling.
Oh yeah, I think it was Jeter. He's our sound guy.
Cause I remember during the pandemic, like I downloaded everybody and I would just play as you guys all day.
Yeah, those were some good stuff there. Fire Pro is like still, I think, one of the best
Yeah.
wrestling video game ever created.
Oh yeah. So another company I want to talk to you about. I don't know how many times you ref there for DPW.
Okay, I only rep there twice. I was supposed to go down to North Carolina rather. Had some car problems, unfortunately, but I was okay. But yes, every time that they were in Jersey, I have refereed for them.
Nice, nice. And there was another one too. I don't know how many times. House of Glory.
Just once,
Okay.
and that was just because like I took a ride over with someone who was on the show. But
Nice.
yep, I did a match there. They have a great crowd, a really nice setup. I think it's in Queens. I
Yeah.
think so.
And then another thing that's pretty big. I don't know if you've got to do every show for the weekend. Tell me about in your eyes the Restival.
Oh, the Restival. So the first Restival that I did was only like a few shows. I was really happy to do the Southeast like Super Show with Action and TWE, so that was really fun.
Mm,
I got to work with like a lot of different Southern talent there. Um, and I did, I think, the last episode of Uncharted Territory when they did that season in season three.
mm,
So it was kind of nice to finally do an Uncharted because I never got to, since I was like still very new at the time. And there was probably like one other show that I did, but I can't remember. But ever since then, yes, it's been very consistent, busy bookings throughout like all the weekends that have been happening. The
yeah.
last year was definitely the busiest for me for sure.
Nice. One thing I wanted to ask you about, and a lot of these refs and wrestlers aren't a big fans of, so I don't know your take. You've got to
Mm.
ref some deathmatch wrestling, so walk me through some of
Mm.
those.
So death matches, yeah, that is right. There's a lot of different opinions about deathmatch
Hmm.
wrestling. A lot of people just feel weird about being around glass.
Yeah,
So when I was living in Florida, I went to an ICW show. Wasn't on it, but I went to an ICW show, and they had one weekend where they did Pit Fighter, which was typically like a hardcore type of death match thing,
yeah,
where they didn't use glass, and it was in a cage. And I was like, okay, I think something like that I can do because I do like a lot of those types of chaotic matches. So I asked Danny DeMonto if I could ref a pit fighter, and he said, "Well, we're actually going to be in Chattanooga during the time I would be for Uncharted when they're running there. So you can do that show." And then when I was working one Uncharted a few weeks before then, they actually did use light tubes in the match, and I was like, okay. But prior to that, there was another referee who was a death match referee who was coaching me on a lot of tips of like how to handle that type of stuff, like the things that you have to do to make it safer and just make sure you check on people. So yeah, that was basically that experience that I had. The light tubes were like it was a DDT through the light tubes, but it was on the mat, and that was pretty much like the end of the match there. So I didn't have to really go much longer with them
yeah.
around. And I think Danny saw that, so he goes, "If you want, you could try like one match on No Holds Barred where they use light tubes, since that's the day after Pit Fighter." I'm like, sure, why not? And yeah, basically was like, okay, this isn't like as bad as I thought. If anything, I think the worst injury that I've seen was with barbed wire.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it could really just be anything, really.
Yeah. And then to go with that, you've got to ref death matches. You've done singles, tags, scrambles. Do you have like a favorite style of match you like to ref for?
Scrambles are really fun just because I feel like typically what those matches are, no count outs and no like needing
Mhm.
to count people out of corners and things like that. So you can let things go a bit. And it's a little bit chaotic, so it keeps you on your toes. I mean, like it really does depend. If it's like very singles, and I prefer like not prefer, but I really enjoy reffing a lot of matches that are like the shoot style, where it's
Yeah.
like very mat based. I feel like very engaged whenever I do those types of matches. But sometimes it just kind of comes down to like who's in it.
Yeah, that's true. One of the things I want to talk to you about, I've got to work with you at Fight Life. I was talking to Frankie the other day. One of his
Mm.
favorite matches from Fight Life so far has been Dustin Flash Waller against Kylon King. You got to ref that match, so tell me about that one.
So I was kind of thinking about this the other day. I tried to like come up with a list of all my favorite matches of the year, and I think that
Mhm.
might be my favorite one.
Nice.
Just because it felt like there was a lot of emotional value that I have to working with Dustin and Kyle on since we all kind of came up around the same time. They were from a different school where I was from a different school, but we would work together a lot. And to see them grow is very amazing to me. They also won the tag team Discovery Gauntlet at Uncharted, and I was able to ref that match too. So I was very happy to do that match. I think I do try to watch it consistently just because there's so many things that like went really crazy with it. The O'Connor series
Oh,
that they
yeah.
did was a little scary because I wasn't sure like how close to the ropes that they would be. So that was kind of like an odd situation. I think having Alec Price also on commentary for that added a lot to it as well because
Yeah.
I think the first show that I ever refed at, it was like his third or fourth show ever because he used to come from a sister school,
Mhm.
Two Sets of Strength, which was Bo Douglas's. So I mean, it's just like it was a very you don't really know like who was going to be up, and I think it ended in a tie with like
Yeah.
a kind of like a double like cradle pin. And yeah, that I'm glad that Frankie thinks that that's one of his favorite matches. I hope you liked it too. That was a
Oh,
really
yeah.
good one.
So when you talk about you were making this list, what other matches are on there for some of your favorites this year?
Oh, it's hard because I felt like this year was not quite as like elevated as I was last year.
Mhm.
But that's not to say that didn't work for great companies and shows and matches. Miracle Gen versus Gold Class over at ET versus Dragon Gate last year was really cool. I really liked working with Sumi Sakai. I got to work with her over at Spark Joshi. She did two matches technically. One was with Billy Starks and one was with Starlight Kid, which I really liked a lot. Um, oh gosh, it's tough. Alec Price and Ryan Clancy and NFW I thought was very good. I would have to kind of look through the list again, but
Yeah.
I would say that like Miracle Gen has pretty much consistently been on that list for a lot of it.
Now, in your eyes, like I'm curious, like what do you like? How do you rank like some of your favorite matches? Was it the story that was telling, the moves? Like to you, what are some of your favorites? Like why?
That's a good question. I think it's a story, but also like the pacing of the match. There are times, especially when you go for a count where you think it's going to be over, but it's not, and then you
Mhm.
have like a reaction to it. That happened with Gabriel Sky and Jimmy Lloyd over at ICW No Holds Barred in Cambridge this year. That was probably my favorite show that I refereed on of 2024. And whenever like you're caught up, like you get so involved and like engrossed in what's happening, and your focus is like 100% in, then you know it's a good match. But it all varies on like what makes a good match, and I think it also depends on the ref. But I agree. I think it probably is the story for me, like the things that they're doing to make me feel very invested, and I'm like locked in here. So that's the feeling that I have when it comes to a really good one.
Nice. I was watching a match not too long ago, and I saw you were the ref. So tell me about it. Daniel Garcia and Wheeler Yuta.
No, well, you watch the whole thing.
I watched majority of it.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
it's an hour long.
Yeah.
That's probably the best match that I've done in my career. I don't
Really?
even know if
What's
anything
like
could
sticks
really
out about
top
it?
it. Well, I think it was a very special match because, for one, it was the 100th defense of the IWTV World Championship. Kevin McElvaney from PWI also came up for the show, which was a great show top to bottom. I really highly recommend that people watch IWTV 100 for all the other matches that were on the show. But that one was special because Yuta, I felt like, was probably one of my favorite IWTV champions. His claim to fame was like doing these long, endurance matches. And when he won the championship from Lee Moriarty, they went like 50 something minutes.
Mhm.
So I knew going into it that it was going to be a long match and ended up going to draw for 60. Daniel Garcia was very special at the time. I think everybody knew that it was a matter of time before he could sign somewhere. Um, I'm a very big fan of his work, and I grew a lot of respect for both of them doing that match. It was very hot. It was about like 98 degrees in a warehouse, and I don't know how all of us were able to do it in like 60 minutes, but I felt like we really made something very special there. And apparently, like that was a match that pretty much got Yuta signed, or at
Wow.
least like convinced them to sign him. So yeah, I felt like everybody involved was really cool. It's always going to be like a very big milestone for me for sure.
Nice. And then one thing you mentioned earlier, I didn't even know you lived in Florida. So what was like the biggest difference? I'm assuming you went to wrestling shows down there from like the wrestling down here there to like where we are right now in New England. What's like the biggest difference down there?
So I lived in Florida for about like 2 years, and
Nice.
one summer of that I moved up to Tennessee, which is the southeast area. Very different things.
Mhm.
Florida with the Indies, I wasn't very successful with, but I feel like they do have a lot of talent there who are very hungry to find their avenues to wrestle. Um, I didn't really do too many shows in Florida, so I can't really tell you. And any of the shows I felt like were the bigger shows, they kind of like flew in people from the
Oh
Northeast.
yeah, yeah.
So I feel like Florida felt like any other place. The Southeast, I felt was probably like the most different because of like how they do matches. Like it's
Mhm.
not very move centric, but like pacing. Um, Incredibly like mat based and gnarly. A lot of people in the southeast, like from what I heard, were like taught to bleed. Like they were
Wow.
taught that blood makes the match, and I guess it's always been some historical thing with the wrestling down there. If I go again, which will definitely be hopefully soon, I always try to like ask people who have been wrestling down in that area for a long time, like what was it like, 15, 20 years ago, like in this territory, like what's like the history here, like what's like the core part of this like wrestling. But there is a different feel to it. I would say the last thing I would probably mention about the Southeast is that the fans down there, especially in Chattanooga, will watch like any wrestling, deathmatch wrestling, lucha style, any wrestling they'll watch. It might be because the area didn't have a lot of wrestling for a while until IWTV ran Uncharted there and started to build it up like a Southeast first area. And now Action is like doing super well, and TWE is doing really well. They're starting to like branch out and have other people run shows. But they're very loyal and very, very supportive people. Not to say that we don't have it up here,
Yeah.
but the Heartland is a really wonderful place for wrestling.
Nice, nice. Another person I wanted to ask you about, what was your first interaction with Ref Bill?
Oh, Bill and I used to go to NEW shows, I think at the Bethany Town Hall, when they were still running there.
Wow.
I met him one time, I can't remember who it was, and then when I saw him reffing over at Paradise Alley, I think I went up to him and I said, "Hey, you remember me? Like we used to go to these shows together." So he started about a year before I did, and naturally he was basically like my mentor.
Nice.
The one thing about Test of Strength was that we didn't really have any refs who were homegrown there,
Mhm.
except for me for like a long time. A lot of the times there were students who were just refereeing to get like better ring awareness and reps before they would debut as like a wrestler. So Bill and the other two referees are at PPW, Miguel and John were the people I had to go to for advice at the time, who were outside of like my trainers and my coaches. Because I mean, you can get a lot of really great advice from wrestlers, but if they haven't actually refed career wise, it could only go so far.
Yeah.
So, Bill and I became, like a mentor mentee thing. We'll still talk about like, in this situation, I did this and this, and we like share stuff that we've learned. And now he's just like one of my best friends. I can't imagine doing this type of stuff without him.
Now, speaking of learning from refs, I didn't even know. Did you go to a ref seminar, Chikara?
Yeah, Bill and I went to Bryce
How was that?
Remsburg's. I think it was the first one that Bryce was doing at the time,
Mhm.
and I got a text from my friend Carol, who was also a very big Chikara fan, and she said, "Oh, did you see that Bryce Remsburg's doing these seminars?" I'm like, "Oh, that'd be cool." So I mentioned it to Bill because I said, "Okay, well, it would actually be easier if I was able to drive to Philly with somebody else." And I didn't know that Bill was like a very, very, very big Chikara fan.
Mhm.
So we signed up together and took that class. It was great. It was like pretty much mostly talking. Bryce telling us about all the things that you need to know to like just be like a good referee, but he also talked about other things like being an announcer, doing camera work. And we were selected along with Adam Gull, who's also another really great friend of mine, a ref too, to do these incubator matches, which is basically like these practice matches that the students came in for. That was a great experience, and I was so happy I was there for it.
Nice. And then one of the things I was pumped to ask you about, I've heard mixed reviews about this day, but tell me about reffing at Fenway. How many matches have you reffed? Like, what's the most?
Oh, Fenway. Yeah, yeah. I refed, I only think like three or four, which
Mhm.
isn't, that's kind of typical, especially if you're working with the two ref roster. But it was just very long, and there's like a long waiting period in between matches. I still thought it was awesome. I only did it
Yeah.
once. I would do it again if they would ask me to, and the dates like line up. But it's cool because like you are with like a sea of people who like probably never seen wrestling before,
Mhm.
and they like find everything like really exciting. Plus, you also just get to be at Fenway Park.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's really worth it for anyone who like wrestles or like whatever like involved with shows. Like it really is something.
Now, when you've done it, what was it, like 20 something matches?
It was probably like 18 with like a rumble, I think. Rich Palladino ring announced for all of them. It was like
Oh,
crazy.
I'm having him on a few weeks. I'll ask him about
Okay,
that.
yeah, please do. He's probably done a few Fenway shows at this point,
Nice.
so I'd be interested to hear what he has to say about that.
And then another thing, I had no idea. I was doing research. You got to ref how many times for now Ring of Honor?
I did three shows for them. So, yep. I don't remember how many matches though. It's
How'd that
probably like
happen?
seven. So I got an invite to go down to Orlando, and it kind of worked out great because I was going to be visiting during that time
Mhm.
anyways. I wish I was able to stay the whole weekend, but I wasn't able to. So I did one day of like just doing TV tapings at the studio there when they were running, but I
Nice.
don't think they do studio tapings there anymore.
Yeah, I saw a photo. It must have been cool. Didn't you ref an LMK match?
Yes, I did her and Rachel Ellering. That was
Nice.
at Mohegan Sun.
Wow.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a good
Now,
one.
do you have a favorite venue you refed at?
Oh, that's a good question. Hmm, favorite venue. Well, what's your favorite venue
Uh,
that you've been to?
Have you refed a FET?
Yes, actually, very recently. So that would probably be good. Fenway, of course, is really
Mhm.
special. Like H2O always has like a place in my heart because that's where the Yuta and Garcia match happened.
Yeah.
I would say, the TWE building is really good. When they used to be over at the high school at Saudi Daisy for SCI tournament, I thought that was very special. But I honestly, no, I think it's probably the Webster in Hartford when I was there for GCW the one time last year.
Nice.
Yeah, that's probably it. Yeah.
And then is there like been a favorite storyline or something that you've got to be a part of refing a match or something like that?
Yeah, there were many of them. I don't know if there's any favorites. I think the SCI finals from this past year was pretty good with that. Um, I like the matches that involve like big business over Wrestling Open.
Oh yeah.
Those usually have like really fun stories with it. I liked refing a lot of matches at Blitzkrieg. doing things with CPA and TJ Crawford in particular. Those have some pretty good stories. I really like the Holiday and AG match at the most, well, not the last like Summerfest that everyone did. So that was really cool over at Fight Life. But yeah, there's so many different stories. But oh, I guess like my favorite one is probably Marcus Mathers and Jordan Oliver at ETU because they did two matches and I was able to do both of those.
Nice.
Those had some really cool stories to it.
Nice. Do you keep track of? Do you know the number of how many matches you've refed?
No, sadly, I don't keep track of it.
So it
I
does.
just feel like I forget.
In all the matches you've refed, or even before that when you were training, what would you say are like some of your most memorable moments in wrestling?
Oh geez. I mean, like, I'd say that, I think like seeing Batista get, the heavyweight championship at the time was really cool just because he was like another Filipino
Mhm.
talent in wrestling, and that's always going to be very special. Um, I always like look at Bianca Belair and just like how she got that title and how I wasn't like I don't think I was like a huge like, Bianca fan, but to see like how that whole thing was just crafted with two black women in this like main event and her winning that title and seeing like what that meant to her was really special. I'd say that even just doing the Yuta and Garcia match is special because we were all just like fighting in there. It was like really it was a mental struggle, but to see it get like well rounded was like really nice. Seeing Alex Shelley get the IWTV championship was great. Watching Alec Price get that, like watching people just earn that title
Yeah.
in matches is really nice. And I just think that there's going to be more to come with that type of stuff.
You've refed some of the best, but is there anybody out there you haven't refed a match for that you want to?
Oh, I'm sure that there's plenty of
Yeah.
them. I saw Robbie Eagles recently, and I thought it'd be cool to do one of his matches. So we'll see on Thursday if I get to ref him at Speedball. Uh, gosh, I think like to ref. God, I never refed Alex Shelley before, which is so weird because it just felt like we'd been on shows together when he was at least doing stuff with
Yeah.
IWTV. But I think he pulled off of Indies or something like that recently. I don't know what's going on with that. Um, so I guess like I'll always have that uh, in my heart of like, oh, I feel bad about this. The Workhorsemen I always wanted to do a match with because the one match that I did do at Ring of Honor was them and Shane Taylor
That's right.
in a match that was like pretty short. So I
Mhm.
always wanted to have like all of them. I don't even think I've ever ref Shane Taylor before, but I think he's like absolutely wonderful and very nice. I would love to ref Lee Moriarty again. I only did that once. Um, I mean, there's a lot of people out in the Pacific Northwest I would love to referee. I'm a very big fan of Amira and Eliza Hall. I think that they're fantastic. But I would say like it's probably more so like there's different regions I would like to get to and get to know the talent there. But that's a good question.
So going into 2025, do you have like any big goals for you?
I would like to get some more TV experience again in some type of capacity. I just felt like the TV experience that I got last year was incredibly generous for Ring of Honor and AEW to give me, and I hope that I was able to take that opportunity and show that I took like as much not for granted but like as much as I could out of it, and it was very beneficial to my experience. So I would like to see like how much I was able to apply the knowledge I learned and then like where I'm at like between a year difference because it didn't as of yet don't have any TV experience to go off of for 2024. But I would say that's a big one. I would like to get to the Pacific Northwest or to Canada.
Have you
Those
done
are
Canada
probably my
before or
goals.
no?
Nope, I
Oh
never
wow.
have.
Yeah, it'll happen. But
Someday,
Gina,
though.
I end every interview the same. The day that you decide it's done, now it's not happening anytime soon, but the day you decide it's time to hang up the blue shoes, what do you want your legacy to be remembered for in pro wrestling?
Oh gosh. I guess just to show that like I really did try my best. I don't know. There's a lot of people who probably say stuff like, "Look at this glass ceiling that I broke," and I'm not really like about that. It's just more like I want to push my own like skills to my limits, and if that inspires people, cool. But I still got a lot of time left, and we'll see how far I go.
Nice. And then before we end, let's talk about it. You do Twitch, so tell me about that.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I used to do Twitch like a long time ago, but now that like I'm actually have like somewhat of a little bit of a following. Yeah, so basically like about twice a week I do one day where I just watch some indie matches on IWTV for the most part. And then another day I play video games. My roommate Brian next door sometimes comes over. We have a puppet who sometimes comes onto
Yeah.
the stream, Brick Headstrong. I don't know how that started, but he will be back at some capacity. And now we have like another person, RJ down the street, because he lives down the street from
What
me.
was the game I joined? Was it Jackbox I was playing with you guys once?
Yeah, we try to do the audience participation games, just because I think it's like more fun to like
Mm,
get the audience involved with it. But yeah, it'll be like Jackbox or something like that. Yeah.
nice. Well, Gina, I want to thank you for doing this, and I want to thank you for everything over these years. It's still crazy. I would go to shows, and now I'm helping at shows that you're a part of. So thank you.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that you're getting your footing in the places that you like to work, and I'm excited to see what Fight Life.
Yeah. Thank you, Gina, for doing this, and thank you everybody for watching this episode. This was Best for Business.